Muted yourself, Dave.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Rangers Journal podcast. This one is going out to the members first, and today we are covering Kai's new favourite man, Hamza Igamane, who has joined Rangers in the summer. Kai, thanks for joining today. You're quite high on this guy. Why is that, mate?
Just from obviously done quite because of how long it took. I had more and more time to do research, had more time to watch the footage, and I liked what obviously it's in the Moroccan league, so I don't really know what the standard is there. So I hadn't watched it before, but just kind of the raw attributes of a striker of being able to hold himself, good at taking the ball on. A lot of his goals were first time strikes, which was something I really like. 'Cause it's obviously one of the biggest criticisms of Cyril Dessers is too many touches, too much time to think about it. Whereas a lot of those goals I was watching, he was just hitting it first time, good composure in front of goal, shooting from range as well, good on both feet. Again, like I said, obviously the caveat of playing against the standard of defenders are in the Moroccan league, but you can only kind of do what you can against what you're up against. And I just liked everything that I seen. And then the brief cameo he had at Parkhead, I thought he looked really positive. First time he got in the ball, he went and stole it from the Celtic player. We drop of the shoulder, beat a man, and played us through for a decent chance. So I'm going to back the claim that I said he's going to get 10 goals this season.
I hope so. You kind of welch out of that one now. Thanks for coming on, Bob. What did you make of that cameo? I mean, obviously there was a lot floating about. You know, he hadn't been seen. Was he fit? Was he injured for a year? I think was one of the more wild ones. Obviously, made his first appearance at Celtic Park. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was good to see him come on. Again, I know we've discussed in other pods that why did he come on? Prior to Danilo, considering would expect Danilo maybe being the more senior striker to have maybe made an appearance first, but we now probably know why that wasn't the case. But yeah, I mean, he looked bright. He came on. He was physically, he took players on. But at that stage of the game, you needed some sort of positivity to hold on to, considering the score at that point. So, glad to see him come in. I'm just hoping now that that's the start of his Rangers career, and that we now start to see him being integrated more into the first team over the weeks to come. Because I certainly think that we need, the rotation between himself and Dessers, because again, if Danilo's now out for a 3 or 4 weeks, after the clean up surgery on his knee, we certainly can't rely on Dessers to be the main striker as we did for so long, last season. So yeah, it's positive to see him. So we just hope that's the start of things to come.
Yeah, and just coming back to yourself, Kai. Obviously, you joined from Far Rabat. Probably saying that wrong, but joined from the Moroccan league. I just wanted to touch on your predictions. So, looking at his data, and I mean, it is pretty limited what I could find, to be fair. In the 22-23 season, he made 28 appearances with 9 goals. What makes you think that he can actually surpass that here?
I think just the ability that he kind of showed to be in the right place at the right time, just getting in those positions, not only getting in those positions, but managing to finish as well. Like the data I got from his league appearances, so it was 20 appearances, 16 starts, 7 goals and 3 assists, about 203 minutes per goal and 12% conversion rate, which doesn't, on the base of it, seem great. But you look at the ability, I think, to be in the right place at the right time is something that's very underrated. And again, the ability to take the ball on first time. I think Dessers is actually really good at getting in the right position, but it's having that like intelligence and that knack of just hitting the ball first time, just hit it. And that was something that I really liked from again watching the footage. He's obviously really highly rated in Morocco. I think they were quite disappointed that Rangers pretty much said no to them going to the Olympics, which is why going back to the injury thing was quite weird because it seemed like it was this choice of if he signed for Rangers, he wasn't going to the Olympics, but then he came with an injury and he wasn't fit enough. So I think that's kind of a grey area as well, along the lines of the Moroccan Olympic squad, but it's done really well. So kind of shows you how highly rated it is that they wanted him to be a part of that side. I think they finished, was it fourth? They either finished third or fourth. Has some really impressive performances in the Olympics. It's just, again, an ability to be in a position and take a shot early, which is something we've not seen from Dessers. He's maybe got a bit better at the start of the season. Time will tell, obviously, as the games go on, but the natural instinct and poaching ability is something I don't think you can teach for strikers, and I think going off the footage that I've seen anyway, that Igamane has that.
Bob, just on that Olympic side of things, I mean, take aside for a minute the fact, he came with an injury, etc. If he was fit, where do you kind of stand on that? Do you think Rangers are banging the right for saying, no, we've just signed you, you're staying here and gelling with the team? Or do you think maybe for the player's development that we should actually have let him head over at the Olympics?
I think it's probably a tough one, Dave, that, again, kind of touched on it yesterday with when we were talking about the defensive pairing and even the likes of, Bayrami as the 10 coming in, the fact that he's played, international football over the last week or so, hopefully see him at the weekend. And again, that may have been a positive aspect for Igamane to go to the Olympics and get the game time to build his fitness up. Again, I can take on board the Clement's philosophy or tactic strategy with him, that he's a young boy, he's coming into a new league, he probably needs to build up physically as much as from, again, probably similar footage to what Kai's watched, maybe not in the same depth, but watching, even going back today just to look over some of the footage on YouTube of him just to help prep for the pod today. He looks as if he can come in deep, he can hold the ball up, he seems quite physical. He's able to kind of go left side, right side, play through the middle. He seems quite comfortable on both feet. So to me, from the Olympic point of view, it would have been good that it may have accelerated his progression into the first team. But again, we don't see what happens in training. You don't know what level of quality he was at when he first came in, as much as there has been discussion amongst us within our group chat and those that are more in the know, that he seems to, again, even what Clement said, he's doing very interesting things with the ball in training. What does that mean? Is he able to juggle really well? Is he able to do things that in kind of real time games that is going to prove pivotal? You don't know what that really means. So yeah, I think from an Olympic point of view, it would have been good to have seen him, probably from a Rangers point of view, just to see him before he comes in. But it's difficult because it is that flip of the coin of he may have had more game time, but also, as we well know, the likelihood of an injury would have also been greater, and he could have come back injured and we might not have seen him. So maybe it was just that kind of risk and reward that keep him in cotton wool, just build him up in training to the point where he's able to play for us rather than go out and potentially get injured with the national team.
Yeah. So just on us signing him, I mean, again, the rumours kind of seem to fluctuate quite a bit. I think I've seen anywhere from about 1.16 to 2.5 quoted for the fee that we signed him. Bob, I guess I'll come to you on the first bit of this. Do you think that's sort of fee that we should have paid for what is, I guess, a development player? Are you comfortable with us spending that sum of our budget on a development player?
Yes, to a point, because I think it was needed. We don't have anyone within the B team setup that would have come in and been the equivalent of Igamane So I think we needed to go out and strengthen anyway. But for me, as much as he's maybe looked as a development player or a project player, I'm now hoping that with his cameo at Parkhead, he's now going to be integrated more. So you're kind of hopeful that the run of games that we've got between now and Christmas or the end of the year, he starts to get more and more game time and really starts to push to be a starter. I know he's only 21. I think he's 22 start November. So again, he's still young, but to get him in and integrated, it would then help justify the fee that we've paid for him.
Yeah. And I probably should have asked Bob this one rather than you, Kai, given your previous statements. But I guess, do you see that potential fee for him as good value? And if so, what kind of makes you think that?
I think going off the fact that as soon as he's been deemed fit by the manager and the medical staff, that he's been chucked in a game at Parkhead, maybe signifies that he's not been brought in as a development player. I think whatever the fee is, you can never tell if it's a good fee until they're 3 months, 6 months in, or until you sell them at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? If you make a profit on it, you could say it's a good fee. If they end up being a good player, you can say it's a good fee. It's hard to tell. Also, not really knowing what the fee was, because I'm sure at first it was rumoured to be like 500k, and then all of a sudden it was like 1.5 million, and it seems to have kind of stayed around that 1.5 to 2 million mark, which could be a bargain depending on how he does. Like, given that all the cameos, all that we have of his time in Scottish football, but it was really positive and probably the only thing that we've been able to cling on to from that game.
Right.
And I think the ability looks like he has, like, he can probably play on the left wing as well. He's a really strong dribbler of the ball. I think looking at the stats I had as well are from the Moroccan League, he had like 64% dribble success and like 1.9 successful dribbles per 90, which doesn't seem like a lot, but given how the stats are judged and what actually counts as a dribble, they're actually really good numbers. So he come on the left wing. Obviously, it'll be really interesting to see what happens on Sunday, because I think people are maybe assuming he'll go up front, but he could play off the left if Cortez isn't fit enough. It could be Igamane that plays off the left and give him a chance here. He would obviously cut in on his right foot. He's got that really strong frame and he's quite quick, which is obviously hard to deal with as a defender. Normally you're dealing with like kind of leaner, nippy wingers. But if you've got someone that's got a bit about them that kind of can bully the fullback and drive inside, help create space for others. I think it's really, again, it's the same with like Casemiro. If he's going to play centre half or right back, I think it's really interesting to see that Igamane did come on at left wing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we've obviously spoke about, or everyone spoke about the fact that he came on before Danilo. So it's going to be interesting come Sunday. I think he'll probably be on the bench, but I think there's probably more of a chance that he starts at left wing instead of Dessers being dropped from the striking position.
I was I'm no long finished work, but I was seeing something just while I was waiting for this to start as well, saying apparently both him and Cortez are fit for the weekend, and I just wonder if we'll see a kind of division of minutes on that left wing. You know, potentially Cortez starts, Igamane gets either the second half or the last 30 minutes or something, because you'd have to imagine that Clement's going to be quite iffy, I suppose, with bringing Cortez in and just chucking him in for a full game. So I think potentially you see him get some minutes in there, as you suggested. Bob, there's been, or I've seen, and this could just be the Twitter cesspit, but I've seen quite a few comparisons with Morelos. Now, that's obviously quite a bold comparison to make at this stage of his career, but what do you kind of see any of those traits in him at all?
Again, it's difficult to have a fully formed answer for that one, Dave. I think, he definitely seemed tenacious enough for the cameo that we've seen against Celtic, and it's, kind of touched on, what Kai said as well, because we've seen so little of them he's not really played any B team games or behind the door friendly games that would have at least given us some form of insight or feedback on his style of play or his attitude or his physicality. Does he put himself about? Again, we can only really go off of the 10 minutes that he got in the last game, and obviously the footage that he's that's on on social media. I would like to think that he's got all the benefits of Morelos, but with none of the drawbacks, which again is easier said than done. I think from an attitude point of view, if he applies himself more than, or in a far better way than what Morelos did during his time with us, he'll very quickly become a fan's favourite, especially if he can channel the aggression and the physicality that Morelos had in a far more positive way and be less a figure of controversy than the Buffalo. But I'd like to again, just being optimistic. I'm hopeful that he can come in and be as potent in front of goal and as aggressive, but without crossing the line.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Kai, where, and again, probably the wrong person to ask this question because you've already said 10 goals, but what would success look like for Igamane this season? Because, I mean, he is relatively young, first time abroad. It's probably not realistic to expect the guy's going to finish the season as the starting striker with 40 goals. So what do you think success looks like?
I think it all depends on how many games he starts, to be honest, Dave. Like if from Sunday he becomes a starting striker or a starting left winger, then I think you need to maybe expect a bit more. Like maybe then the 10 goals is a good achievement, but if he's in and out the team, I think maybe like somewhere between 7 and like 10 goal contributions is quite a decent kind of success rate. Like Bob said, he's about to turn 22 coming into this season, so I don't think he's fully a development player. I don't think he's considered that young like everywhere else in the world. I think we still, same with like Ross McCausland as well, like we consider a 21-year-old still young, whereas you've got players that are playing in Euros finals that are 16. Like those are young players. I think hitting like maybe still call someone that's just turned 20, still consider them a young player, but like you're essentially a fully grown adult at 21, and we still refer to 21, 22, 23-year-olds as young players, which I'm not saying is wrong. Like they're inexperienced rather than young, so I think we use the wrong kind of terminology around that. So I think for Igamane, it all depends on how much he plays. If he becomes a starter, like a starting striker, and he gets 10 goals, I think a lot of people will be disappointed, and then they'll look at Dessers last season and think, do you know what? Those 20 goals, goals weren't so bad.
Yeah.
And even if he becomes the left winger, I think kind of 10 goal contributions would be more than what we've seen from our wingers recently. So it all just depends on how much he plays. But I'm going to stick with the 10 goals and what I said, and that will be a successful season. He can kick on from there, unless he becomes a starter.
Yeah. Okay, and Bob, just I guess one last one for yourself. Where do you see him able to try and truly stake a claim as starter? Do you think that he's going to be able to do that as the number 9, or do you think, as Kai kind of suggested, he might be better placed actually to take that place on the wing on the left-hand side?
I mean, I think based on the footage that I've seen, he looks like he's comfortable coming in from both sides of the wing. Again, probably left side more because he can cut in on his right, which would obviously be his dominant foot. I think we definitely need to have a challenge for Dessers. Again, I think you don't want complacency to set in that Dessers is a number 9 and he's not going to get moved. So I think it's good. He's definitely got a chance of staking a claim for that number 9 spot. I don't see Clermont changing the style of, the formation of play from the 4-2-3-1 anytime soon. Again, having bought in, it's difficult not to talk about it, but having brought in Bayrami as the 10, it seems pretty certain that he's going to stick with the 4-2-3-1, and Igamane either needs to really stake his claim as the number 9 for that number one spot up front, or rotate with Cortez. And again, the Cortez's injury record, in the 6 months he was with us, or lack of 6 months that he was with us between January and the end of the season, in the year that we've got him on loan with the obligation to buy, you really don't want to overload these players. And again, it kind of comes back to something Kai touched on, is that I think there may be a better chance, or there's more possibility of him starting out in the left, just to have that rotation. Just kind of what you touched on as well, Dave. At the weekend, if they're going to manage minutes, that might be the best place for him to start, and it allows us to have essentially a second striker on the park without being in a second striker spot, and see what he can offer. I mean, you don't want to start judging him after one game on the left-hand side if he's predominantly a striker, but it's definitely somewhere that there's probably more chance of him starting or getting into the team from the left-hand side, because I think at the moment Dessers is probably your first choice striker, despite the criticism that has always surrounded him since he joined. So yeah, my head says he's probably going to start coming in from the left, or start his opportunities from the left, but again, hopefully he stakes a claim and provides more of a challenge for that main striker slot.
Okay, cool. And just one for you, since you're the man of bold predictions, Guy. What do you think the likelihood is of him nailing down one of these starting places this season?
I think it's an interesting point. Obviously, Bob raised the obligation to buy Oscar Cortez, who's also still only 20. So I think kind of the way Bob spoke about not overloading Cortez, like we're obviously going to buy him next year when I think he turns 21 in December. So he's still of that kind of youngish age where we don't want to ruin his career because we're going to have him permanently. So you don't want to run him into the ground. I think Matondo's injury maybe changes how Igomane's going to be used, because I think Cortez would have been first choice on the left with Matondo being the backup. So now essentially we have Cortez coming back from an injury, Igamane having played 10 minutes of football as a left-sided options. I hope McCausland doesn't go out there, to be honest. But I think the plan would have been, especially when you look at the Euro squad with Danilo not being included, I think Igamane would have been seen as the kind of second choice striker, with I think it would have been Cortez and Matondo. Matondo is obviously not in there because of the injury. So I think the plan would have been Igamane to be the backup striker with Cortez as first choice, because we have invested in him. Essentially, we've had him on loan and now we've got the loan with obligation to buy. So we've invested I think 4.5 million, roughly around that mark is what it's going to be. But like Bob said, we need to be careful because he's going to be our player. It's not like, I'm not saying clubs aren't careful with loan players, but at the end of the loan, he just comes back to us. So we're paying the money. He's going to be our player. So I think it's a really interesting point that Bob raises about not overloading him. So I do think there's a chance that he might start on the left on Sunday. Hopefully Bayrami doesn't go out there. I really hope Bayrami has been bought as the 10. I keep seeing people worrying about that on Twitter. And now it's all getting into my head, and now I'm worried that Bayrami is going to be playing on the left and we're going to have Lawrence in the middle.
Tom Lawrence,
You've just got no pace in there. So I'm really hoping that Bayrami comes in at the 10. I think Igamane's going to play on the left. I think it's obviously a calculated risk, isn't it? Because Igamane's played 10 minutes of football, but he's going to be more fit than Cortez is. I know Cortez played the bounce game, I think it was last week or over the weekend against Motherwell when he got a goal. So that's obviously promising, but I think there's more chance that Cortez comes off the bench. But again, if Igamane starts left wing and plays really well, it's going to be Cortez that's fighting for that place. unless something happens to Dessers where you then need Igamane to fill in there because there isn't another striker for however long Danilo's going to be out, and then by the time it takes him to get back up to fitness, it's only Igamane we have, who's now currently probably the first choice left winger with Cortez coming back and the second choice striker, which is probably what we've seen with Abdallah Sima last year.
Yeah.
I know people wanted Sima back, but Bob said as well, having the two strikers there without having two strikers is really what we had with Sima. I know he's played a lot of his career on the wing, but when he was playing in League One, he played through in the middle, so he obviously could play there. So I really like the idea of having the second striker without playing two up top. So now I'm really hoping he plays off the left, because I don't think it's worth risking Cortez from the start. Maybe half an hour, 20 minutes towards the end of the game to see where he is. But I think if you're going to be smart and safe about it, you start with Igamane left wing on Sunday. And that's what I'm hoping for as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. That does make sense. And I think you're right. You have to be incredibly careful with Cortez, because we're not just thinking about the next 4 or 5 games. It's the next 4 or 5 years, isn't it? So, yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks very much for joining, folks. Kai, pleasure to have you on, mate.
I was always going to be on this one.
I thought you might.
As soon as I seen that poll, I was like, don't care what I've got planned that day. Schedule's getting cleared and I'm going to be on this one. So, aye, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yep. And Bob, cheers for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much to Kai. I was looking forward to this one. I seen it pop up in the schedule, so I think it's been a good chat for the last half hour, and I think I've definitely got a question I'll be putting in the group chat after this one, when you're talking about putting Igamane in as potentially number 10. So I'll put that in. So that might be the topic of a further pod. So I'll keep everyone on tenterhooks. Yeah, I'll keep everyone on tenterhooks. I'll put it in the group chat and we'll see if it takes or not. But yeah, it's definitely been a good half hour, Dave. So thanks very much for having me.
Not at all. Pleasure for both of you, to be honest. Thanks very much for listening, folks. And just remember, every night is a Rangers Journal night.